Welcome back to the Joe Miller Show, KON Hot Talk 1080 AM, 95.1 FM. This show is made possible by the McPherson Tax Defense Group, 1-800-BEAT-IRS, beatirs.com. That's BEAT, IRS, serving Alaskans, Americans since 1978 with 2 generations of tax defense attorneys. We have with us Arina Grossu. She's the director for Center for Human Dignity with the Family Research Council. She has her MA. She has been involved for a period of time researching sanctity of human life issues, ranging from conception to natural death. Graduate of the University of Notre Dame, BA in philosophy, and she also completed her MA in theology from the Dominican House of Studies in Washington, D.C. And we're going to talk with her about an amazing piece of research that came out at FRC. It's at the FRC research site. If you go to frc.org/Planned Parenthood investigation, you'll find the work that she's done there. She's been spending a number of months looking into Planned Parenthood's abortion practices, harvesting of aborted babies. It's a lengthy paper, and she's here to help summarize her conclusions, what she's found. Arina, thank you for joining us on the Joe Miller Show.
Joe, thanks for having me.
So this is a pretty lengthy paper. Tell us a little bit about what went into this, how you gathered the information, what the objective was in it.
The objective of the paper was to synthesize what we know about Planned Parenthood and its aborted baby parts harvesting, also which biotech companies are involved in this and to what extent, and who's the end consumer, and which universities are involved in all of this. And we've also found that NIH and FDA has taxpayer-funded programs that go towards and they invest in grants for research using aborted baby parts. So we wanted to dig into that, and in the last few months, since July of last year, when David Daleiden first came out with all of the footage, there have been a lot of different primary source documents flying around, and people pointing to emails and invoices from these Planned Parenthood facilities, and a lot of that information is on the Center for Medical Progress website, but it's kind of deep into that site. And then there's a lot of people who since then have found more information. And so I wanted to put that information together and make it easily accessible so that we can see how involved is Planned Parenthood at every level in the states listed, and how involved these biotech companies are, and who are their consumers.
Right. And so, I mean, this is an excellent way to organize. I mean, before we have the videos, kind of a haphazard arrangement of information, you made an excellent effort to organize and provide accumulation of the data. You got information not just from CMP, but where else?
Alliance Defending Freedom has filed for getting public records, as well as Operation Rescue. There is actually Washington Free Beacon was able to obtain some records as well. And then we have congressional letters, which are publicly available, but again, very hard to find. Also letters from universities back to Congress. And so all of these are linked in our paper, and you can read them yourself and find more information as you have universities and different programs looking to either defend their current research programs using aborted baby parts.
So I encourage everybody that's listening to this to go to frc.org/Planned Parenthood investigation. It links to the entire paper there. This is an excellent work. I mean, I assume that this took a matter of months and months to create. Is that right?
It did, and it's actually we're considering a working paper, meaning that as it's available online, and as we get more information and more tips and leads to emails and invoices, we're going to continue adding them in there, so that when you just visit the website, frc.org/Planned Parenthood investigation, you are going to get the most updated version with as much information as we have been able to obtain.
This is a critically important project. It not just marries the data with the videos that we've seen from the Center for Medical Progress, but in addition to that, it helps give us more information to, I think, help disclose what's going on in this country. We had a guest, an investigative journalist, on several weeks ago who suggested that the amount of money that's involved in this is in the hundreds of billions of dollars, direct and indirect type of industries that come out of this. Now, you focused a lot on public funding. Tell us a little bit about what you found on the public funding side of this, how the federal government is actually helping to fund the harvesting of babies for research and other purposes.
For sure. So in 2014 alone, the NIH spent $76 million in research involving fetal tissue. And those grants went to 50 universities, Columbia, Harvard, MIT, Stanford, Yale, and it goes on and on. And so, and they're going to spend the same amount every year. And so we see that the government is funding research using fetal tissue, and these companies, as you dig deeper into what these biotech companies are doing, some of them have had relationships with abortion facilities for a long time and with the government. So, for example, the University of Washington Birth Defects in Seattle, Washington, since 1964, they've been federally funded, and they've been doing research on fetal tissue collected from miscarriages, stillbirths, abortions. Obviously, we're interested in finding out about fetal tissue that's been collected, aborted baby parts from abortions, not just any other way, because this is what we're trying to uncover. But they receive over $500,000 from NIH each year, and we see, for example, there's a researcher at the University of Connecticut that has received over $3.8 million in taxpayer funds since 2001. And these researchers put in orders for baby brains, for different parts, and some of them get them twice a month. And so here is NIH giving grants for this research to be done, and there are studies, which I linked to, that prove that the research is used to do studies, but we want to know where are they obtaining these babies from. And then we have emails listing the conversations between Planned Parenthood and some of these university researchers talking about and trying to come up with prices and schedules for getting aborted babies to them.
Let me ask you this. I mean, of course, Reagan banned federal funding for this type of thing, and then Bill Clinton took office. He eliminated through executive order that ban, and that really was the genesis of this kind of involvement that we see not just in industry but in research. When you give us these statistics of NIH funding, university research, and this type of thing, is this something that the official line contradicts? In other words, has the administration said, oh, no, this is not going on, or is it Planned Parenthood? Who's really providing the contrary information?
Well, I think what we have to get to the bottom of is what the NIH is funding is how are these baby organs and baby parts obtained, and if they're obtained from aborted babies that are sold by these biotech companies to these researchers, this is what we're trying to get to. And also, I think the Planned Parenthood Select Panel, they're looking into this. What is the relationship that Planned Parenthood has to these biotech companies, and these biotech companies have with universities, and to see how big the problem is. And further, it's not just Planned Parenthood. Of course, we're focusing on Planned Parenthood because they're responsible for a third of the abortions in America. But then there's a 70% of abortions that are done in non-Planned Parenthood facilities. And that's another investigation that needs to happen. What is going on behind closed doors in these places that a lot of state health departments won't come and touch, even to just see what they're doing? You know, you have tattoo parlors and restaurants that get searched much more frequently than abortion facilities. And like we saw in the Gosnell case, it took 17 years and lots of deaths and a lot of complaints against Gosnell's facility before the Department of Health went in there to see what was going on. And we really need to get to the bottom of this entire abortion industry and how they are marketing aborted babies.
All right, we'll talk more about that after the break. We have with us Arina Grossu. She's the director for Center for Human Dignity with the Family Research Council. Just came out with a great paper, frc.org/Planned Parenthood investigation. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Joe Miller Show, KOAN Hot Talk, 1080 AM, 95.1 FM. We have with us Arina Grossu. She's the director for Center for Human Dignity, Family Research Council. recently completed a paper on research using aborted babies. You can find that paper at frc.org/Planned Parenthood investigation. We talked briefly, Arina, in the last segment about the Center for Medical Progress. Of course, one of the people that are associated with that recently indicted in Texas. He was investigating, along with a coworker, Planned Parenthood there. And instead of indicting Planned Parenthood for wrongdoing, a grand jury instead targeted the whistleblowers. Just extraordinary, isn't it?
It really is. It just shows the state where we are, that they're going after the messengers instead of the perpetrators. And where else? And actually, this is really incredible to see. There are a group of Cornell law professors that came out with a statement saying, we are pro-choice and we are in favor of Planned Parenthood, but we are worried about what's happening with David Daleidon's indictment because this threatens the journalistic community. This threatens investigative journalism, period. That if people don't want to go there because it's abortion and they're willing to indict someone for doing investigative journalism, then it's freedom of the press is threatened.
Absolutely. And I mean, it doesn't even meet the straight face test. In part, he was indicted for actually being part of the buying and selling of body parts when obviously that wasn't his intent at all. I mean, clearly intent is missing. There can't be a complete criminal act, not even a prima facie case of it, and yet they still indict him for that. I mean, it's just absolutely crazy. It's persecution. And even though likely I think these criminal charges are going to be dismissed, the cost is significant. And there's a major, major chilling effect that takes place. Now, you told me during the break that there have actually been invoices uncovered between, it may have even been the Planned Parenthood affiliate that he was investigating and the University of Texas. Tell us a little bit about that.
So Operation Rescue was able to obtain copies of invoices from Planned Parenthood Gulf Coast, the one in Houston, Texas, and the University of Texas medical branch. And these invoices show quote-unquote reimbursement for study supplies, which refers to aborted babies, and then there's a second payment for quote-unquote consent payments. And Operation Rescue says that this appears to be a designation where Planned Parenthood hid the profit. So if that is the case, then that payment would be illegal. And so here we have actual invoices. We have in the paper, there's a link to the actual invoices, and you can see the emails going back and forth between Planned Parenthood Gulf Coast and the University of Texas, and with invoices and labeled as such. And so here we actually have proof of this, and instead of indicting Planned Parenthood is the one who should be in the Harris County Courthouse today being indicted, not David Daleidon for uncovering this.
Right, and so, I mean, the issue, just so that our listeners are aware, what makes this illegal, at least under the current state of the law, is if you're profiting from the buying and selling of these body parts, that's unlawful. But you can pay the actual cost of, and I hate even saying it, whatever the actual cost of procuring the parts and not fall askance to the law. Is that correct?
That's correct. And in addition, what needs to be under investigation, what has been under investigation in different states, is not only whether or not they are making profits off of baby parts, but also are they performing partial birth abortions? Are they killing babies alive that are born alive? Because from what the videos have shown is that they'll change the method of abortion so that they can get quote-unquote better parts, or that they'll and that the babies will be born alive and then they'll be killed, because then they don't have to be injected with chemicals that then the university researchers can't use those babies' organs if they are already filled with chemicals. And so what we want to discover, and this is what the federal, the select panel is looking at, and also different state investigations are, is Planned Parenthood breaking the law in any of these circumstances?
And so, I mean, from the CMP investigation and others that have been involved in this, a number of states have engaged, and they have started investigations of their own. Maybe even some have, I've heard, initiated defunding, where there's state funding of Planned Parenthood. Give us kind of a summary of where the states are at on this.
Well, 13 states have initiated investigations, and 8 states have initiated defunding. There are places like New Hampshire that has defunded over $650,000 of taxpayer funds from Planned Parenthood. Ohio just recently also defunded Planned Parenthood there. We have to understand that no taxpayer money should be going to this organization, and that is in the center of all these scandals, among other scandals. This is just one of the scandals. Obviously with Live Action and the work that they did prior to David's work, we saw that they were willing to do sex-selective abortions. They were willing to cover up the trafficking of minors and rape so that they can cover their tracks. And so what we want to see is what is going on in these Planned Parenthoods. And in some of these investigations, for example, in Florida, they discovered that they were doing late-term second trimester abortions against the law. In other states, while they were trying to find this information, they've uncovered other things where Planned Parenthood has broken the law. So in other states, Planned Parenthood has been caught transporting remains of babies across state lines to dump them in a landfill because it was cheaper or easier for them to do that, and that's against the law. So there's a lot there. We say the more that these investigations happen, the more the deeper you dig, the more you're going to find on Planned Parenthood. And so these investigations must happen at the state level, as they will at the national level. But each state needs to take up not only their Planned Parenthoods in that state, but also all their other abortion facilities.
So tell us a little bit about the biotech companies that are involved in this. It's not just Planned Parenthood, but there are all sorts of middlemen, if you will, that are engaged in this trafficking. Who are they? What's their level of involvement?
Okay, so I list 8 biotech companies. A lot of people have heard about STEM Express, and David DeLayden has done a great job of getting actual purchase orders, which I link to his site, and job listings and bonus structures for baby parts. And so they're at the forefront, and they actually list who their consumers are. They list universities, they list pharmaceutical companies. Then you have Advanced Bioscience Resources. They're also based in California, just like STEM Express. Again, they have a fee schedule. So, for example, They had ABR has federal contracts with the FDA and NIH for at least $300,000, and in their fee schedule they say that organs from babies 17 weeks to 22 weeks that they charge the government $340 for a thymus from a baby, and they charge $340 for fetal liver, and so there are actual links to these fee schedules and to records showing this. Then you have DV Biologics in California as well. As you can see, there's a trend. California is very liberal when it comes to a lot of things, but also to not really caring about what goes on with their abortion facilities.
Right.
And then, of course, in New York too, there's the Albert Einstein College of Medicine, Human Fetal Tissue Repository, and they have also been involved. There are researchers there who have done work, and they used to have a brain bank that received brain tissue from 1995. So for example, the University of Connecticut has been receiving brain tissue from that biotech company. Then you have Novogenics Laboratories in California. Again, the House Committee actually requested records from them. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the University of Washington Birth Defects Research Laboratory, which has been basically in 2014 alone, they collected 596 fetal samples from women from different hospitals and clinics and distributed about 1,100 baby parts to 60 researchers.
You mentioned the fee schedule, and I was going to ask you, at least it's my understanding that the fuller the term of the baby, the more money they get for the parts. Is that a generalization that's accurate?
Usually the older the baby is, the more developed the baby is, and if the parts are intact, if they're looking for, there's one researcher that was looking for that gets hemispheres, so brain hemispheres. And so usually the more developed the baby, the more expensive.
Just unbelievable. I mean, folk listening to this program, I mean, this is the most grotesque thing you can imagine, and it demands your involvement. You have to call those that you've elected to engage, to investigate, to pass laws to stop this type of thing. It is barbaric, folks, barbaric. And we as a society are going to be held responsible for this type of barbarism. Arina Grossu, I appreciate the efforts that you've done here. Again, FRC.org, Planned Parenthood investigation is where you can read the research paper. Take a look at it if you want to be informed. Stay with us, The Joe Miller Show. We'll be right back after these messages.